Pat Sullivan did have a birthday yesterday. There is a big debate, depending upon the fossilized runes, exactly when the birth date itself was, the day and the millennium. Her sister was very, very helpful, pointing out that Pat is, in fact, older than 77, but we're not sure how much older. You have a nice sister. We want to thank Maureen for that. Yes, and Pat's going to strangle Maureen when the service is over. We got Michelle and Mark here. We got Maureen Sullivan. We got Felix Becerra here. Good morning, Felix. How are you doing? And you don't look any older either. You know, I met Felix when he had, when we first started in 2006. We met it for lunch in Coral Gables. You don't look any different than now. Now.
Yeah, I had hair, maybe.
All right. Ray Roldan is here. Cecilia's here. Serge is from Sedona. Bobby up in Kissimmee. Daniel is out in New York. Pat Care is here. Amelia Schweitzer is here. I know she's 10 miles west of Merritt Island. And we've got Christine and John from Port Orange. Now, speaking of Kay Schweitzer, Kay sent in a check the other day. And this, you got to see this. They included this card here. And no, that is not Maureen in the middle there being grabbed by whatever that is. This is an original 1939 postcard. Look at this.
Wow.
You should see it. It's original 1939 postcard with Charles Lawton, Maureen O'Hara. Does this ring a bell to anybody? Charles Lawton, Maureen O'Hara.
I knew him well.
What?
I dated him.
Oh, yes. Yes. And Sir Cedric Hardwick. Oh, my. And Victor Hugo's, yes, Hunchback of Notre Dame. She sent the card with it. I thought it was wild. Okay.
You can buy those cards on Amazon.
But that really looked old. I mean, it looked like an original card.
Yes. They're supposed to. I've got a bunch of them.
Wow. Okay. Want to talk to you today about keeping close. I did a lot of calling to people today around the parish this week, and it's been a bad week for everybody. Name something that could go wrong physically with people or anything else, and it's been that kind of week. It's just been a week. You can see Judy was having chronic pain. It wasn't sure why. Went to the hospital. It turns out she had some major issues and is now wearing a back brace. This is other people have had physical therapy. Other people have had issues with the family. I mean, it has just been one of those weeks. You know, sometimes you go by and everything fine. There's no drama. I was yelling at my classes just in fact on Thursday and Friday I was yelling at my classes. I said to each one in the class, is there any drama here at this? Anybody have any drama? And everybody said there was no drama. I said, you're terrible. I live for your drama. I said, listening to your drama reminds me I don't want to be 18 and 19 again. And you've let me down. And the classes thought this was very, very funny. But it was just, they were drama free, which is obviously awful. But everybody else, it was just one of those weeks. There was not one thing, it was just everything all over the place. Let's see, Cindy and Larry Deach made it in, and so did Chris Diaz. So I want you to remember today, when we have the memorial candle, to keep people close. A lot of people you might not know, it's just been a bad week. A couple of other things. When we do the memorial candle, I want to say a few words about what happened with the Hamas and the Gaza Strip and stuff. As you well know, this whole issue has been simmering for a while. This is not something that's brand new. And the issues are on both sides. It did not help that they put an extremist in as the Minister of Justice, and then they had all kinds of things at the third largest holiest site in Islam. But then you had extremists and the Palestinians killing people too. So this has been an ongoing mess. What I asked you to do is, before you jump on the bandwagon one way or the other, is to remember the thing most important is civilians. I don't know if you have been reading this, but there is a big push now for the Israeli army to invade the Gaza Strip. I don't know if you know how many people live in the Gaza Strip, 2.3 million. If there's an invasion, the amount of death that will take place on all sides will be catastrophic. One of the things you may not have been paying attention to, and I certainly didn't, is southern Lebanon now can match Israel's army with missiles and modern tech. Most people were not aware of that. And the Israeli army realized if they had a fight with Hezbollah this time, if everybody be lucky to have it a draw. So this whole area has been a mess, exacerbated by extremism on all sides. So before taking sides, I simply say, let us please remember in our thoughts all the civilians, people who have just minding their own business. And it's just, so keep that in mind if you would. Okay, some other things I want you to think about coming up for 2024. And I'll be getting with the board about this. It depends if our giving remains good. We can add more services from time to time. Now, I want you to think about this. This sounds stupid. If we've got 5 clergy and somebody says, I have something I really want to talk about, and then Kenneth says, well, I'm sorry, everything is booked for the next 3 months. That is an incredible waste. That makes no sense. So we can add services if you want. Let's say Michelle has something she really wants to talk about. I said, I'm sorry, everything is booked for the second and fourth Sunday for the next 4 months. Does that make sense to anybody? Of course it doesn't. So we can add services. I want you to be thinking about that. Number 2, I'm concerned about pastoral care. We need to be much more intentional about how we care for everybody. And I'm going to be getting with the board about maybe sending out everybody an email and a letter saying, tell us how often you want us to be in touch with you to check in. That is my number 1 concern now. We're covered with people, we're covered with clergy, we're covered with things, but we need to be covered with pastoral care. I want you to think about that and see if you think that makes sense to you all about being more intentional and having a good thing. And with that comes, we might want to consider adding a support group on a regular basis. Just like we have the book club on Saturday morning, we could also have a pastoral support group where people just vent what's ever bothering them for the week. So these are things we can do now. We can do these. Before we couldn't, but now we can. So I want you to think about that. I'll be getting with Serge and Felix and Rick and others on the board to talk about this and see if we can talk about where we go. So I just think about that. Cecilia's here. These are all making sense. How do we expand things where we can to give better care for everybody that's a part of All Souls? Having said that, then, we light the memorial candle. Already there is much death in the Middle East, and we light the memorial candle remembering civilians everywhere, who just plain ordinary people, and they're not with us anymore. So remember civilians. These are the ones everybody forgets. We always talk about tanks and this and that, but nobody ever remembers the civilians. For civilians, Ukraine, the Middle East, everywhere, we light a memorial candle. Amen. Our introit, picked by Michelle Peter Gabriel. If you would, Grimmy. Our call to worship is for those of us who would wish to read it together. And Don will pull it up in just a second. And for those of you who wish, if we would read this together. O spinner, weaver of our lives, your loom is love. May we who are gathered here be empowered by that love to weave new patterns of truth and justice into a web of life that is strong, beautiful, and everlasting. And a morning prayer by those who wish, we could read it together. To pray, to listen to the voice of the one who calls us the beloved, is to learn that that voice excludes no one. Reading for us this morning is Ray Roldan from Washington Heights. And Ray will be reading the 3 readings. And Ray, if you would.
Good morning, everyone. To speak of relatedness as mysterious reality of God is, in the final analysis, to affirm that God is not a pure essence existing in itself. Rather, God is relationship. It is through relational behaviors that we affirm this is divine, and we say this on the basis of our fragile, limited, contingent, and ephemeral experiences. Dr. Ivan Rivera, an excerpt from Longing for Running Water. I am often struck by the dangerous narcissism fostered by spiritual rhetoric that pays so much attention to individual self-dangerous improvement and so little to the practices of love within context of community. Bell Hooks, an excerpt from All About Love, New Visions. I believe in the beginning of time. The soul of the earth was scattered by the billions, released into the wind, invisible as shattered glass. And now the purpose of life is not to conquer the world, but to touch each inch with your fingertips, feeling the edges until you discover the pieces that match the borders of your own heart. Because in seeking connection to that which was meant to be part of ourselves, we enable the ability to restore some wholeness to the universe. Jennifer Gordon, poet, posted on our Facebook page. Blessed be everyone.
Special music by the Indigo Girls.
Today, I'd like to talk about love, about the ways in which the meaning of the word love, writ large, undergirds our covenant as Unitarian Universalists. And though this wasn't planned, this dovetails perfectly, Ken, with your comments about pastoral care and us all holding each other close and the deep, deep importance of that. Love is our primary shared spiritual discipline as a faith. Love is the foundation of our relationship to each other within this church, and more largely within the relationship to the world and indeed to the cosmos. In my hospice work, I have seen how love brings us into right relationship with all living beings, including our living planet and universe, and creates the spiritual space and the culture necessary for beloved community. As Dr. Gabara says in one of our readings today, God is relationship. Gabara states, it is through relational behaviors that we affirm this is divine. So often, I find personally Western cultural ideas about God to be remote and so vague as to be incomprehensible. This is why the idea of God as relational and God as the connective tissue in our relationship with each other is so vital for our understanding. I have often explained to those who ask me what UUs believe about God that as broadly as a faith, we understand that God, however we define that, is synonymous with love. Because whatever an individual Unitarian Universalist believes about God or the lack of such a being, or any place in between, we do believe in a love that is larger than our individual selves. And that love is what binds us together in covenant. We care deeply for each other and extend that care into our communities and indeed into our care for the planet. If there is a kind of discipleship in UU, I think that's what it is that we bring our love out into the world and we share it and we live into it. We know instinctively that love equals life, and that is our common bond. As we sang in one of our hymns today, from you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. This pithy line is simple yet wise instruction for how we can accomplish building the common good. In the Jewish Kabbalah tradition, there is a concept called Simsun that illustrates this love, this divine love, as relationship between God and ourselves. And I think it underscores what Dr. Gabara is saying about God as relationship. I am no Kabbalah scholar, but in my understanding, broadly speaking, Simsum is the idea that God was all there was in the beginning, and God needed space to grow the universe into being. So God constricted their divine self to create all that is, and this is an act of great humility. It is to me a wonderful picture of a loving God who sacrifices of their self in order to create a space for all living things to grow and strive, to come into the fullness of their being. I think our living faith calls us to emulate this behavior of making space for all other life to flourish and grow in relationship with our individual selves. This is a hard sell in a culture that is so hyper-focused on the individual, in a country rooted in notions of manifest destiny, a people divided about what constitutes and who should benefit from the common good, a society where serving ourselves first and foremost is emphasized at every turn, where people are encouraged to grow their brand and not their capacity for loving their neighbors as themselves. In another of our readings today, Bell Hooks speaks to the toxic individualism at the cost of the common good, when she says, I am often struck by the dangerous narcissism fostered by spiritual rhetoric that pays so much attention to individual self-improvement and so little to the practice of love within the context of community. And someplace I see that particular sentiment often reinforced, unfortunately, is in evangelical communities, with the idea of the personal relationship of oneself to Jesus Christ and thus to God is emphasized over the care that we should be sharing with each other in community. That is really God's love. And this is also, as I have observed, part of the self-help movement too, is that deep internal focus can sometimes become occlusive to seeing the larger community and the ways in which we participate and fit into that and the ways in which we create that. The connective tissue of divine love is tearing and splitting, friends. And one only needs to turn on any news channel or read any media outlets to see this happening in real time. Again, witness our discussion this morning of what's happening overseas and also what's happening here. I see this happening in my own self sometimes too, and I have to stop and remind myself of my vows to this faith tradition as a minister, and before that, as a congregant in covenant with a UU church, to remember that when I personally feel myself clutching and clinging to ideas or resources or possessions or people, that I am tearing the connective tissue and hurting not just myself, but other living beings in the process. And I would add here that part of God being relational is understanding that we will do these things and we must learn to forgive ourselves, make amends, and come back into right relationship. We make covenant, we break covenant, we renew covenant. I do not think it is a coincidence that one of my primary health issues is mixed connective tissue disease. It is a genetic disorder, and it predated not just my calling, but my very birth. It is passed down. I think part of what I'm called to do in this life is to help heal our communal connections to each other. And this is why I chose chaplaincy and pastoral care as my primary ministry. Chaplains are called to constantly build the circle wider, to bring the spirit of the holy into all of their interactions with others, to make a space for the spirit to enter. At our best, I think of us as the masons, the bricklayers of beloved community. Hospice work is a microcosm of beloved community, and in some ways, I think a relational model. Because it centers on the concept of connecting the patient, the family, and their communities of care together to create the best life possible for the patient and family while they live. We are not focused on death, contrary to popular belief, but on living the best life possible as long as possible. And as such, hospice work exemplifies the work of building beloved community, one person, one family, one community at a time. Each hospice discipline contributes in their own way to this work, and it takes all of us to do the work of journeying together to the distant shore, to the great mystery beyond this life, whatever the patient feels that may be. I encourage all of you to think of models of connection building action in your own lines of work and your interests, and consider the ways in which those models can be used in other aspects of life. Because the more energy that we put into thinking about and focusing on building connections among and between ourselves and our communities of care, and prioritizing the common good, the more we all will benefit. Building the common good is about life and how we live it, about what we are cultivating with our thoughts and our actions. Are we cultivating humility, making space for others to thrive as God did in the beginning? Are we cultivating generosity of spirit? Are we cultivating a love of our neighbor, whoever they may be? I have found Father Richard Rohr to be a relatable resource for living into the spirit of covenantal community, with love at the center of our actions. In this excerpt that I'm going to share with you, Father Rohr describes the holiness we experience through connection and healing in this excerpt from one of his books of meditations. Holiness reveals itself through our capacity for positive connection. The more we can make connections and the more with which we can connect, the holier we are. God is precisely the one who connects all things one to another. Before enlightenment or wholeness, we rank things up or down. Afterward, we connect things horizontally, almost automatically. Many have said most of our problems today tend to be psychological, but the solution is always spiritual. Only healthy, great religion is prepared to realign, reheal, and reconnect all things and reposition us inside the whole universe of things. Thomas Merton said the true self should not be thought of as anything different than life itself. Not my little life, but the big life. Capital letters. And that's the end of the quotation from Father War. As I reflect on this, it occurs to me that our great religion as Unitarian Universalist, our living tradition, has all the necessary foundations to build beloved community, one congregation at a time, taking our love out into the world and showing through our actions how to do the work of connection, how we can live into the call of love to unite and not further divide our communities. We are the people we've been waiting for, and the time is now. May it be so. May we be the ones to make it so. Amen, Ashe, and blessed be.
When Michelle was sharing with us this morning, comes a reminder that when she was saying that love one another, turn the other cheek, how we are better than just our individual egos. One of the big complaints that Roger Moore was telling us about on NPR was that, and PBS, was that in certain congregations, when the preacher has been talking about turn the other cheek and love one another, they have been roundly criticized as being weak. And when the preacher said, these are Jesus's words, the response has been, we'll get something stronger. We do something that we get from Jesus, but Jesus got it from Jews, and Jews got it from the Hittites, and the Hittites got it from the Canaanites, or vice versa, and we got it way, way, way long ago. How do we show genuine welcome and love and compassion? In antiquity, it was a simple meal, about as simple as you can get: bread and watered down wine. You couldn't trust the water. So what we do here is what we have learned from a long history of humankind, to offer, for those who wish, simple bread and simple cup, to say you are loved and you are affirmed, not just welcome, but affirmed. In this congregation, we don't care whether you are gay, straight, or not sure. We don't care whether you're neurodivergent or not. We don't care whether you have a college education or a trade education. We don't care if you have no education at all. We care for you, period. Just being here is what counts. And if you can't be here, we keep you in our hearts anyway. So we offer this as a way of an outward display. And for very good historical reasons, this does not work for everyone. So when we do meet in person, we hold hands. Now we can do that again. We can hold hands. And we say the following. And don't you love how wisdom comes in many, many ways? The first words from Saint Winnie the Pooh. If you'd repeat after me, promise me you'll remember. You are braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, smarter than you think. In other words, God didn't promise days without pain, laughter without sorrows, sun without rain. But the divine did promise strength for the day, comfort for the tears, and light for the way. And Michelle, if you would.
Our concluding prayer today comes from Deuteronomy. I call heaven and earth to witness today that I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Choose life so that you and your descendants may live. Amen.
As is typical of All Souls, we would combine an Irish and a Hindu blessing. Now may the road rise to meet you, and may the wind be always at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face. May the rains fall softly upon your fields. And when we meet again, may the divine in me greet and embrace the divine in you. Amen. Before we go, a few things to share with you. Michelle, when she picked that last song, will get a kick out of this. So will the rest of you. When I read that at weddings, they thought that was I was reading lyrics from the Byrds. They did not realize that's from the Bible. It's from Ecclesiastes. Had no clue it's from the Bible, from 2,300 years ago. Yes, don't you just love that? Look, we've got some goodies coming up this week. I want to share with you. Felix has got something he's going to have me share with you for the rest of you. Ray Roldan has a song from country and about love, which we'll play, I'll send out to you tomorrow as it follows up on the share. And then I'll send Felix's along. When you've got things to share, send them to me and I'll send them out for goodies for everybody. I've got some more poetry too. So for Ray's contribution and Felix's, we'll see those this week. I cannot thank you enough. In the meantime, keep safe, keep well. Let us continue to love one another. Go in peace. Amen.
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 Amen. Good week, everyone.
Good week, everyone.
Amen. And thank you, Michelle.
Thank
Thank you. Thank you. And RSVP is real. Mask up. I've got it.
Good. Everybody have a good week.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bless you all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone.
Bring that television, Pat.
Poodles.
Poodle vision.
I love my poodles.